Go where the joy is. And go there often. Every moment you can. To find, meet, free, feel it. Drink it in. Pour it out. Share it round. It's what feeds your fountain of youthfulness, your wellspring of well-being, your peace of heart and mind, body and spirit, daily, all lifelongly. Go where the joy is. And welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to show 117 in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the sweet and salty coast of Rhode Island. This is your poet and poetorialist Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more fully, more alively, more poetically, and yes, more sweetly. In broadcast 116, it was all about kissing in many felt forms, from the inviting to the soft to the stirring, in films and songs, poems, anecdotes, moments, and more. Between, but also beyond the caress of men and women's lips, the many other ways the world, nature itself, can beautifully kiss you, and you can gladly kiss it. This week, we start with dessert. Start with the rich and ripe fruits of life, self, love, the living world, waiting to be tasted, savored, appreciated. The sweetness, the joy, the bliss. Putting it first and seeing how it greatly and beautifully flavors all the rest. Well, I've got some to serve up to you, to us here. A parfait of cultural commentary, poetry, inquiry, and discovery. Let's start with some milk and honey. Milk and honey. I love milk and honey. Chèvre warm from the goat, grapes warm from the vine, honest wine pouring through the mouth, songs of love, songs of the sea, song lines of the spirit, seeing into essence, feeling into presence, the earth breathing with the heavens, men and women breathing with nature, the sacredness of the land, its stories, the endless mysteries felt and stirring, all the joys, passions, possibilities flowing through the world, through this life, through this self. The Way In by Linda Hogan. Sometimes the way to milk and honey is through the body. Sometimes the way in is a song. But there are three ways in the world: dangerous, wounding, and beauty. To enter stone, be water. To rise through hard earth, be plant, desiring sunlight, believing in water. To enter fire, be dry. To enter life, be food. Thank you, Linda Hogan, from her collection, Rounding the Human Corners. Well, a poem from the Uptown Farmers Market, Port Townsend, Washington, the Olympic Peninsula, September 2010. The Runaway Smile. It was a poem I wrote for the person who was smiling, incredibly, Rachel Van Lannen, whose sudden, bountiful face one day, in that place, out of the blue, sent me sailing inside. Talk about the sudden delights we get to encounter and long remember. The runaway smile. She had a smile you could run away with. a smile-blooming sun and soul, marrowstone roses and pasture grasses, ripe blackberries and honest beauty, blue water and red earth. This lady farmer from Mystery Bay, sharing her milkmaid smile and the hawthorn fruits of her alpine goats. I ripple that out to her wherever she may be. This is the bee sting from the old Dodge estate, Madison, New Jersey, 1 July, years back. The bee sting. On the instep, a small price to pay for the joy of walking barefoot through the meadow of summer clover, under the simple wonder of large white clouds, a large blue sky, without thoughts or cares, tasting only the sweet air of being here. What takes you back to the pure sweetness of your youth? What are the touchstones, the sight or scent of something, or touch? One of mine is this, every single summer, certainly in the Northeast, where I've spent most of my life. East Hampton, New York, July 2001. Privet. The scent of summers past, the flower of a youth near ocean-brushed beaches, pinwheeled with umbrellas, of idle days spiced with ice cream cones and outdoor showers, of nights filled with lightning bugs. All the sweet sensations of those summer times felt again in the fragrance flowing from the hedges of flowering privet. From the Yucatan, Mexico, 1998. Cielos dulce. Cielos dulce. Sweet clouds. As a bon voyage, the clouds have prepared some farewell confections. First, candied violet-dipped meringues topped with a compote of sun-ripened peaches. Next and last, the pièce de résistance, a flaming baked Alaska. Well, that reminded me, actually coming back across that poem, of a story that my Uncle Hugo told me when I was younger about his father and his Uncle Oscar, my great-uncle Oscar, and my grandfather, who were in business together in the textile business in the 1930s and 40s in New York City. And there was the old Penn Station, the old hotel there with a great restaurant, and they used to sit at a particular table. Every day they would have lunch together for years and years, the two of them. And they'd have lunch, and they would always order a dessert, and they would share it, and they would always order the same dessert, flaming baked Alaska. I can picture the scene. I would have loved to have seen it myself, but I can imagine it. Well, so yes, we have all kinds of sweetness to choose, to discover, to express, to receive, to take in, figuratively and literally. And on the latter note, I looked up a history of desserts. This is from whisked.com, WHISKED.com. Let's give you a few snippets. The word dessert is derived from the French desservir, which translates to, quote, to clear the table. The origin is apt, considering that the first use of desserts was to wash down the aftertaste of a large meal with something sweet. Desserts in history, such as in the Middle Ages, revolve more around fruity sweet foods, such as jellies and wafers mixed with exotic fruits, nuts, and butter. Indeed, the custard is known to be one of the first desserts ever eaten in the Middle Ages. The next few include apple pies in 1381 and gingerbread in the 1400s. Well, up until the 17th century, they say here, desserts were meshed together with savory dishes and were used as nothing more than palate cleansers. However, the 17th century saw the advent of dessert cookbooks, which spread in popularity due to the vast sugar plantations in the New World that allowed costs of sugar to go down, and with those prices it could be used abundantly for sweet foods instead of being relegated to a rare flavoring. It also saw the move of having desserts in the 17th century solely reserved for the end meals, as opposed to having several small dessert courses as palate cleansers. Well, there was that, and then ice creams, which can be dated back to the 3000th century BC. First known instance of ice cream is probably best described as what we now know as snow cones or shaved ice. The first traditional ones found in the mid-1800s, and last a note on chocolate, not a dessert in and of itself. Well, I'm not sure about that. That's how I like to have it when I do. Widely used in most sweet foods. The Aztecs, back in history, revered it so much it was used as a form of currency. Well, maybe a chocolate bar will once again be as valuable as a piece of silver or gold. Who knows where the world may go on that? Maybe you have wonderful summer seaside childhood memories, or just childhood memories. Mine were at the seaside of the Good Humor Man and the truck and the jingling bells, and how that fellow could reach into this little door without knowing or seeing, because it was so small, and know exactly what you were asking for to pull out. And there were dozens or more of things to ask for that through that little door. And it brought back a favorite memory of mine and my father. I think the first time I ever remember having an ice cream popsicle, and he said, "I'll buy you whatever you like." We're at the beach, and I asked for a toasted almond, and he said, "Could I have a bite?" before I got to it, and he took an enormous bite out of it, like there was almost nothing, like a sickle of it left instead of the pop. I think I cried or pouted for a moment, and then he said, "That's okay, I'll get you another. You could have it all by yourself." And that then became my favorite thing, to offer it to him first, because he'd take that bite. And he's not around anymore, but if he was, I'd tell him how much I appreciated those moments. So Stephen Heller, designer, talked about the Good Humor as the best logo ever designed. He wrote this back in 2011. He said, "As a child, I knew it was springtime, not when the crocuses bloomed, but when I heard the ringing bells of the Good Humor wagon, which materialized like clockwork every April 1st, a block from my apartment house. The white uniformed Good Humor man was not just some fly-by-night itinerant cream slinger, but a middle-aged veteran named Harry. I always thought that was his entire name, who each year, for as long as I could remember, stood his post from April to October, selling Good Humors on a stick and in a cup. If I had to pick the most American of all the logos of the 20th century, it would have to be Good Humor. Where did it come from? In 1920, the candy manufacturer Harry Burt created a, quote, chocolate coating compatible with ice cream, says the corporate history. His daughter was the first to try it, and her verdict, it tasted great, but it was too messy to eat. Burt's son suggested freezing the sticks used for their Jolly Boy suckers, an early intervention, into the ice cream to make a handle, and things took off from there. He called it Good Humor, a Good Humor bar based on the widely held belief that a person's, quote, humor or temperament was related to the humor of the palate or sense of taste. How about that? So there you have it. I can still taste those Good Humors. The ice pops, the chocolate eclair popsicles, the strawberry shortcake one, the dreamsicle. Yeah. Sometimes when I see the sky, the sunset, it reminds me of the dreamsicle popsicle. Well, since we're speaking of ice cream, and how many of you out there that I know are listening love it, and others, how memorable it is for many, and also still a delight for many, and often eaten before anything else. This is Black Raspberry. It's a poem I wrote for Richard Russack, a wonderful friend and longtime mentor of mine from Maine and Texas, about his great favorite flavor and experience. The year was 1947. The place, Reno, Nevada. High summer. Two boys from the east, visiting their way out west relatives. You and your brother Bert, sent to town with enough change jingling in your pockets to buy ice cream. At the parlor beside the casino. At sea, among the endless flavors on offer, your brother suggests Black Raspberry. And it was heaven. A taste you still remember, savor, 3/4 of a century later. Here's Galway Connell's poem, Blackberry Eating. I love to go out in late September among the fat, overripe, icy black blackberries. To eat blackberries for breakfast, the stalks very prickly, a penalty they learned for knowing the black art of blackberry making. And as I stand among them, lifting the stalks to my mouth, the ripest berries fall almost unbidden to my tongue, as words sometimes do, certain peculiar words like strengths or squinched. Many-lettered, one-syllabled lumps, which I squeeze, squinch open, and splurge well, in the silent, startled, icy, black language of blackberry eating in late September. Thank you, Galway Canal. Would you like to be out there picking those with him, or just on your own? And I have one to bookend in a way a bit. The handpicking and raw eating. This is a poem from the Olympic Peninsula from Port Townsend, another one from Port Townsend, different time, and a place of fabulous family pie makers and pie making. And I wrote this for my then daughter-in-law, Elise Garling. It's called The Pie Maker. With pounds of plump blackberries picked together after our sale and dozens of transparents plucked from your brother's orchard, Nash's freshly ground flour, honest butter, and ice water, you work your pie-making magic in the oven-warm heart of your grandmother's kitchen, and soon serve up to us, 17-minute sitting, slices of fragrant fruited wonder with large scoops of love and sun. I still remember that moment. I can taste that moment, taste that pie. From the Marginalian on Nature and the Serious Work of Joy. Michael McCarthy wrote the book, The Moth Snowstorm, Nature and Joy. There can be occasions, he said there, when we suddenly and involuntarily find ourselves loving the natural world with a startling intensity in a burst of emotion which we may not fully understand. Well, he's a British naturalist and environmental writer, Michael McCarthy, a sort of modern-day Rachel Carson, and he explores those things in that book, part memoir, part manifesto, a work of philosophy of a kind rooted in environmental science and buoyed by a soaring, poetic imagination. You might enjoy the book. I'll just read one slip of it here. It is time for a different formal defense of nature. We should offer up not just the notion of being sensible and responsible about it, which is sustainable development, nor the notion of its mammoth utilitarian and financial value, which is ecosystem services, but a third way, something different entirely. We should offer up what it means to our spirits, the love of it. We should offer up its joy. Thank you, Michael McCarthy. I agree wholeheartedly, and there it all is for us to find joy in before and between meals and during and otherwise. Yeah, and the other business of daily life. Early spring air, to me, maybe you, is one of nature's great desserts, great delights, along with the all cleared and cleansed air after rain. This is a poem from April 2017. Let's breathe it in together for a moment. Sweet air of country, spring, now flowering trees, newly cut grass, the earth breathing out again. You were probably curious if I had dessert first before I had supper tonight, which I do before the show. I did indeed. I had a beautiful, perfectly ripe and cold white peach. Off the charts. I almost didn't need anything else after. It was so fulfilling. Well, dear listeners, are the flowering trees just mentioned not confections of a natural kind? For me, they are, as the clouds are, as other parts of nature are, including people's flowering faces, spirits like the farmer lady I mentioned there, with the Runaway Smile. This is from Cobble Hill, Brooklyn. One April day, there was a weeping cherry tree out in front of the house I was poet in residence at for some weeks, and this poem came into me, The Weeping Cherry, the one weeping so pinkly, profusely over the old iron fence, cannot be weeping with anything but pure joy on a day like today, a made-for-April afternoon for every sidewalk and blossom-eyed sidewalker down Brooklyn Way. When I Am Among the Trees, by Mary Oliver. When I am among the trees, especially the willows and the honey locust, equally the beech, the oaks and the pines, They give off such hints of gladness. I would almost say that they save me, and daily I'm so distant from the hope of myself, in which I have goodness and discernment, and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often. Around me the trees stir in their leaves and call out, "Stay a while." The light flows from their branches, and they call again. It's simple, they say, and you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine. Thank you, Mary Oliver. And are you listening to the voices of nature speaking, the trees and other things, other living things? Are they beckoning to you? If they are, listen to them. And what about the planets? Maybe especially the moon, and the stars. Here's a musing on those back in 1990. Stars, sweet confection of the gods, dipped in the Milky Way and nibbled on a sultry night in the heavens, before bed, and epic celestial dreams. We also have the delicious colors and scents, don't we, of wherever we live in the world, especially if it's a northern hemisphere, in my case, northeastern summer, to taste into right now, yet again. So faithfully, here it comes, here it is, here it's been. This was one on the east end of Long Island, Sagaponack, New York, 25 years ago. Dessert-like day. I could still taste, hear, smell, and feel it. Perhaps Provence. Pedaling behind you, and your south of France chapeau, a wide-brimmed beehive buzzing with beauty, your pale linens blousing in the breeze, pedaling past the purple and gold-swallowed meadow, the chartreuse-stained barn, the soon-to-be sunflowered field of another August, past fountains of blue hydrangea and flocks of rose hips and tiger lilies, down to the absinthe ocean. Questions about starting with dessert? Oh, I do have a handful for you. How often? How often do you start your day with dessert, or lead the way before other doings, other parts of living, with generous servings of sweetness, things simply and deliciously full of good feeling? Could be good tasting too, but I'm thinking especially of good feeling. Are you fully tasting the honeyed parts of your days, of your moments? Are you going for the joy and going there often? Following your bliss in large or smaller ways? Any ways? If not, why not? If so, how is that whetting your appetite for more of it? Where has it led you? I'd like to know. What are your most blissful memories? And what are your blissful moments made of these days? The ingredients, your recipe for blissfulness. Or a place somewhere inside, or literally, you always find and are able to enter it. And what, by the way, was your great favorite actual dessert in childhood? Well, I spoke about the good humor popsicles, but mine was also rice pudding and coconut ice cream. Later in life, it became sometimes dark chocolate. Yeah, what dessert do you love these days, too, if you're having any these days, if it's different? The Art of the Commonplace is a book by Wendell Berry. It's a benediction on the world, on creaturely joy. And Maria Popova in The Marginalian says in her beautiful 1939 meditation on the elusive nature of joy, and Anais Nin wrote of the type of joy that can, quote, come like a miracle, touching everything with light. But in a world this miraculous, it would surely be a special kind of solipsism to assume that such joy is only accessible to human consciousness. After all, the more we're learning about the wonders of non-human consciousness and the wide range of emotional and mental states that non-human animals can experience, the more it seems like this crowning curio of positive experience joy should belong to the whole of the animal kingdom. And that's what the wise and wonderful Wendell Berry, a Thoreau for our time, writing in the tradition of Henry Beston, explores in a passage from his altogether magnificent collection, I agree, The Art of the Commonplace, the agrarian essays of Wendell Berry. And I'll just read you a few lines from that. There's not only peacefulness, there is joy. I sat one summer evening and watched a great blue heron make his descent from the top of the hill into the valley. He came down at a measured, deliberate pace, stately as always, like a dignitary going down a stair. And then at a point I judged to be midway over the river, without at all varying his wing beat, he did a backward turn in the air, a loop, the loop. It could only have been a gesture of pure exuberance, of joy, a speaking of his sense of the evening, the day's fulfillment, his descent homeward. The movement was incredibly beautiful, at once exultant and stately, a benediction on the evening and on the river and on me. It seemed so perfectly to confirm the presence of a free, non-human joy in the world. Yeah, beautiful read. Do look that up if you're interested. Joy by Stuart Kestenbaum. The asters shake from stem to flower, waiting for the monarchs to alight. Every butterfly knows that the end is different from the beginning, and that it is always a part of a longer story in which we are always transformed. When it's time to fly, you know how, just the way you knew how to breathe, just the way the air knew to find its way into your lungs, the way the geese know when to depart, the way their wings know how to speak to the wind, a partnership of feather and glide, lifting into the blue dream. Beautiful. Thank you, Stuart Kestenbaum. Many of you, of course, would know of The Power of Myth, Joseph Campbell's book on how to find your bliss, what it takes to have a fulfilling life, his book and his talks with Bill Moyers back in time. Great talks. I've just was revisiting them again, not particularly for this show, but just because I was. Putting bliss atop your list of must-dos does matter greatly. I've done it, and I feel life is all the better for it, not just sweeter, but richer and fuller and more beautiful and alive and worthwhile. He said, if you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a kind of track that has been there all the while, waiting for you, and the life that you ought to be living is the one you are living. Wherever you are, if you're following your bliss, you're enjoying that refreshment, that life within you, all the time. Sacred space is an absolute necessity for anybody today. You must have a room or a certain hour or so a day where you don't know what was in the newspapers that morning. You don't know who your friends are. You don't know what you owe anybody. You don't know what anybody owes to you. This is a place where you can simply experience and bring forth what you are and what you might be. This is the place of creative incubation. At first you may find that nothing happens there, but if you have a sacred place and use it, something eventually will happen. Our life has become so economic and practical in its orientation that as you get older, the claims of the moment upon you are so great, you hardly know where the hell you are or what it is you intended. You're always doing something that's required of you. Where is your bliss station? You have to try to find it. We're having experiences all the time, which may on occasion render some sense of this, a little intuition of where your bliss is. Grab it. No one can tell you what it is going to be. You have to learn to recognize your own depth. Poets are simply those who have made a profession in a lifestyle of being in touch with their bliss. But most people living in that realm of what might be called occasional concerns have the capacity that is waiting to be awakened, to move to this other field. I know it. I have seen it happen. Thank you, Joseph Campbell. Why not let yourself be filled and moved by whatever happiness you meet, feel, and in your own singular way, choose and follow your bliss. Begin singing early. Be the first bird at the first light of your day, to fill the silence with song, with your song, with the hymn of your heart, the music of your mind, the melody of your body, with a singular song, one that comes from the mouth of your soul, comes early and daily when you let nature, your nature, have its open, wide way. Begin singing early, my friends. Bliss by May Sarton. In the middle of the night, my bedroom washed in moonlight, and Outside the faint hushing of an ebbing tide, I see Venus close to the waning moon. I hear the bubbling hoot of a playful owl. Pierrot's purrs ripple under my hand, and all this is bathed in the scent of roses by my bed, where there are always books and flowers. In the middle of the night, the bliss of being alive. Thank you, May Sarton. The Women by J. May Barizo. An evening of expected rain. Out the window clouds lifted their skirts and the wind poured in. We were the mothers lingering over the dessert tray, placing the sweets in our mouths one by one. We were the soothers and givers, keepers of children and men. Those days, our skin bunched up at the bra line, eyelids gathering like crinoline as it folds. Yet standing there at the table, there was nothing in the world we were in want of, not even the loves that had escaped us. Whatever we suffered, we let go of willingly. To know we were not the same women as before did not pain us. When the others spoke, their voices swept over us like bees hovering over lilacs. Outside, lights strobed over the Hudson. We watched a white boat riding the crest of a wave headed to sea. We felt an ache we realized was happiness, almost unbearable. The Women. Thank you, J. May Barizo, for that. I love how Jane Kenyon speaks of happiness and how all can find it, or how it finds everybody. Of all kinds, happiness. There's just no accounting for happiness, or the way it turns up like a prodigal who comes back to the dust at your feet, having squandered a fortune far away. And how can you not forgive? You make a feast in honor of what was lost and take from its place the finest garment, which you saved for an occasion you could not imagine. And you weep night and day to know that you were not abandoned, that happiness saved its most extreme form for you alone. No, happiness is the uncle you never knew about, who flies a single-engine plane onto the grassy landing strip, hitchhikes into town, and inquires at every door until he finds you asleep mid-afternoon, as you so often are during the unmerciful hours of your despair. It comes to the monk in his cell. It comes to the woman sweeping the street with a birch broom, to the child whose mother has passed out from drink. It comes to the lover, to the dog chewing a sock, to the pusher, to the basket maker, and to the clerk stacking cans of carrots in the night. It even comes to the boulder in the perpetual shade of pine barrens, the rain falling on the open sea, to the wine glass, weary of holding wine. Thank you, Jane Kenyon. Well, how about, I wanted to share with you a little bit from Annie Dillard, but I'll just tell you about Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. It's a wonderful book. It's about finding the miraculous in the mundane, on reclaiming our capacity for joy and wonder. She said the world is fairly stuttered and strewn with pennies cast broadside from a generous hand. And she said at the... Of course, she's the one who said how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. It's one of her famous quotes. But in the book, she says, it's dire poverty indeed when a man is so malnourished and fatigued that he won't stoop to pick up a penny. But if you cultivate a healthy poverty and simplicity, so that finding a penny will literally make your day, then, since the world is in fact planted in pennies, you have with your poverty bought a lifetime of days. It's that simple. The Honeycomber. It's a poem of mine, beachcombing of another kind, for your floating poet here. But anyone can be one such a one as this. The honeycomber gathers sweetness, faces, feelings, moments, instead of sea glass and shells, from the shores and tides of his days. Keeps his feet and eyes bared, his heart unbuttoned, to discover the softness of the world, the in and out flowing wonders, the full honeying sun. The Laughter of Women by Mary Sherman Willis. From over the wall I could hear the laughter of women in a foreign tongue in the sun-rinsed air of the city. They sat, so I thought, perfumed in their hats and their silks, in chairs on the grass amid flowers glowing and swaying. One spoke and the others rang like bells, oh so witty, like bells till the sound filled up the garden and lifted like bubbles spilling over the bricks that enclosed them, their happiness holding them, even if just for the moment. Although I did not understand a word they were saying, their sounds surrounded me, fell on my shoulders and hair, and burst on my cheeks like kisses, and continued to fall, holding me there where I stood on the sidewalk listening. As I could not move, I had to hear them grow silent and adjust myself to the clouds and the cooling air. The mumble of thunder rumbled out of the wall, and the smacking of drops as the rain fell everywhere. Thank you, Mary Sherman Willis. The laughter of women. Rob Bresney from his astrologyzone.com e-letter on the subversive power of joy by Janie Stevenson. Quote, the unexpected, spontaneous, and pleasantly disruptive nature of collective celebration is one of the great equalizers of social and political struggle. Quote, holding on to and centering joy is a vital tactic for personal and group resilience, as well as political resistance to an agenda that seeks to enforce hierarchy and division through mass fear. Authoritarianism is directly incompatible with collective joy. It demands fear, obedience, hierarchy, and an obsession with security and preparation for war. Well, maybe I was reading that, my friends. We could do with a flood of such joy, collective joy through the world right now. What do you think? Thank you, Rob Bresney, for putting that in front of me. From her novel, her 1987 novel, Beloved, Toni Morrison, on the body as an instrument of joy, sanity, and self-love. I felt it is a call to us all to embody joy, to love whatever bodies we actually do have. And in that book, she says, in this here place we flesh that weeps, laughs, flesh that dances on bare feet in grass. Love it hard. Love your hands, love them. Raise them up and kiss them. Touch others with them. Pat them together. Stroke them on your face. Love your mouth. This is flesh that needs to be loved. Feet that need to rest and to dance. Backs that need support. Shoulders that need arms, strong arms. Love your neck. Put a hand on it. Grace it. Stroke it and hold it up. And all your inside parts that they just as soon slop for hugs, you've got to love them. The dark, dark liver. Love it. Love it. And the beat and beating heart. Love that too. More than eyes or feet. More than lungs that have yet to draw free air. More than your life-holding womb and your life-giving private parts. Love your heart. For this is the prize. Thank you, Toni Morrison. Okay. Needing a sip. Bit warm tonight. Needing a sip of water. Mm-hmm. The White Porch, Mccarthy song. I wrap the blue towel after washing around the damp weight of hair, bulky as a sleeping cat, and sit out on the porch, still dripping water. It'll be dry by supper, by the time the dust settles off your shoes, though it's only 5 past noon. Think of the luxury, how to use the afternoon like the stretch of lawn spread before me. There's the laundry, sun-warm clothes at twilight, and the mountain of beans in my lap. Each one I'll break and snap thoughtfully in half. But there is this slow arousal. The small buttons of my cotton blouse are pulling away from my body. I feel the strain of threads, the swollen magnolias, heavy as a flock of birds in the tree. Already the orange sponge cake is rising in the oven. I know you'll say it makes your mouth dry, and I'll watch you drench your slice of it in canned peaches and lick the plate clean. So much hair, my mother used to say, grabbing the thick braided rope in her hands while we washed the breakfast dishes, discussing dresses and pastries. My mind often elsewhere as we did the morning chores together. Sometimes a few strands would catch in her gold ring. I worked hard then, anticipating the hour when I would let the rope down at night, strips of sheets knotted and tied, while she slept in tight blankets. My hair freshly washed like a measure of wealth, like a bridal veil. Crouching in the grass, you would wait for the signal, for the movement of curtains before releasing yourself from the shadow of moths. Cloth hair and hands smuggling you in. Well, thanks for that, Kathy's song. It's one of mine, Sipping Nectar, 1996. If I was a hummingbird, I would drink you, sip your nectar, sweet syrup. I would beat wings, soft as your petals, humming. Well, here's a poem urging, or certainly greatly encouraging us, you, to preserve your greater aliveness, Do not go fallow. Do not let the verdant field of your body go fallow. Live without vital streams of sun, water, warmth, tilling, seeding. Your precious earth, your lush self, so ripe, so rich a harvest of gatherings, yieldings, you bring to life by intimate, ardent tending. Do not go fallow, my friends. Constantine Cavafy, remember, body. Body, remember not only how much you were loved, not only the beds on which you lay, but also those desires which for you plainly glowed in the eyes and trembled in the voice, and some chance obstacle made them futile. Now that all belongs to the past, it is almost as if you had yielded to those desires too. Remember how they glowed in the eyes looking at you, how they trembled in the voice for you. Remember, body. Thank you, Cavafy. Just taking a few things out so we stay in good time with each other. I came across an excerpt from Duke, The Life of Duke Ellington by Terry Teachout, and a slice of the story about his diet. Duke, who's always worrying about keeping his weight down, may announce that he intends to have nothing but shredded wheat and black tea. Duke's resolution about not overeating frequently collapses at this point. When it does, he orders a steak, and after finishing it, he engages in another moral struggle for about 5 minutes. Then he really begins to eat. He has another steak, smothered in onions, a double portion of fried potatoes, a salad, a bowl of sliced tomatoes, a giant lobster and melted butter, coffee, and an Ellington dessert. Perhaps a combination of pie, cake, ice cream, custard, pastry, jello, fruit, and cheese. Unbelievable. His appetite really whetted. He may order ham and eggs, a half-dozen pancakes, waffles and syrup, and some hot biscuits. Then, determined to get back on his diet, he will finish, as he began, with shredded wheat and black tea. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine that scene? I just had to share that with you. Well, so essential to nourish ourselves on all levels, dear listeners, fully and healthily, generously, maybe even more so now in these depleting times many of us are in. Going hungry is this poem. What happens when you don't feed your heart, your soul, the deep nourishment it needs, it deserves? The daily regimen, bread and wine of joy, of deep loving, being deeply loved, as essential as the air you breathe, to sustain the whole of living. Going hungry, going without this way, without this bounty of milk and honey for your spirit body, flesh and blood body, is no way for anyone to be or choose. No way for you to thrive or stay vitally alive, especially when it's all there for the inviting, the allowing, and partaking. I was thinking, of course, of picnics, which are a kind of dessert, and completely a kind of dessert I think of as an outing, dessert of an outing. And there was one that I especially thought was delightful. It's called Picnic in the Air, where gravity is suspended by late afternoon, leaving you free to picnic or frolic past sunset, moonset, at any altitude you desire, on deep cushions of air, round an awning-striped tablecloth spread weightlessly, elegantly with cold blushing bottles of wine, hard and soft cheeses, cow and goat from France and Spain, wild crusty loaves of bread, whose crumbs drift off here and there on the breeze to feed peckish passing birds, wrinkled olives, ripe berries, sparkling water, bubbling laughter, and languid pleasure over the floating feast. And isn't the gathering of good friends, kindred spirits, at picnics and otherwise, at tables and otherwise, icing on the cake of our lives? Easy to forget at times how graced we are. This is a poem from Greece, from the Cyclades, small island there. This is the actor, the mayor, and the lottery seller for Yannis, Stelios, and Stephanos. Over ouzo, onion pie, cremidopita, octopus, calamari, a wavelet of yogurt with quince, 3 men from this island world, from this island earth, converse, eat, laugh, love, at a simple table by the sea, by the moon, by the leave of unseen gods or graces. I do want to mention I came across a review in a book, The Geography of Bliss, by Eric Weiner. There's a write-up in the Marginalian, but it's One Grump's Search for the Happiest Places in the World, a fascinating tale of psychology, geopolitics, science, travel, and humor. Very, very interesting book. So I'm not going to share that because I don't have time for us now to do it, maybe another time. But in the end, he comes full circle to the famous words of Henry Miller with which the book opens. One's destination is never a place, but a new way of seeing things. Creation Myth by Ileana Rocha. I was born drunk and paisley, vestige from the womb. My face laughed into itself. Eyes sank into earlobe and nostrils, warped into seahorse. I was vanilla bean and Mexican vanilla, an amniotic dessert, and my mother did everything she could not to devour me. I became comino and ayo and hibiscus, all good for grinding. Mocayete, fist and knuckle decomposing mass and matter, baby and mother. When she tried to still bear me, it hurt until she cried diamonds while my father was swapping spit with the agave. Creation Myth. Thank you, Ileana Rocha. Amy Lowell again. Interlude. When I have baked white cakes and grated green almonds to spread upon them, when I have picked the green crowns from the strawberries and piled them cone-pointed in a blue and yellow platter, when I have smoothed the seam of the linen I have been working, what then? Tomorrow it will be the same, cakes and strawberries and needles in and out of cloth. If the sun is beautiful on bricks and pewter, how much more beautiful is the moon, slanting down the gophered branches of a plum tree, the moon wavering across a bed of tulips, the moon still upon your face. You shine, beloved, you and the moon, but which is the reflection? The clock is striking 11. I think when we have shut and barred the door, the night will be dark outside. Thank you, Amy Lowell. Linda Pastan, the obligation to be happy. It is more onerous than the rights of beauty or housework, harder than love, but you expect it of me casually, the way you expect the sun to come up, not in spite of rain or clouds, but because of them. And so I smile, as if my own fidelity to sadness were a hidden vice, the downward tug on my mouth, my old suspicion that health and love are brief irrelevancies, no more than laughter in the warm dark strangled at dawn. Happiness. I try to hoist it on my narrow shoulders again, a knapsack heavy with gold coins. I stumble around the house, bump into things only Midas himself would understand. Thank you, Linda Pastan. That's from her collection, Carnival Evening. Okay. We're into our last stretch of things. I composed this particular poem at Thanksgiving in 2019, but it goes for any holiday, in fact, for any time as far as I'm concerned. What if you forget the turkey? However tender and moist, the golden skin, supremely crisp, the stuffing and the gravy, however savory. Forget the mashed potatoes, the pumpkin pie, and all the wine. What if you simply remember why you gather around a table of kindred others to begin with? This day or any day, contemplate what fineness, fullness of heart you can bring to each table, each other, before you even arrive to sit there. What good stories and nourishing reveries, poetries you can spread out on, sing out to, the table. How greatly it matters every day you're here, every time you take time to make room to feast on your life, to toast your one and onlyness, and the lives and specialness of the others dear and near or far, who make it all the more joyful, flavorful, worthwhile, while you're here on earth. Then on with, savoring the rest and grateful tastes of it all. when we slice the cake. When we slice the cake of our life, a day, a decade, this year, do we find generous layers of loveliness, adventurousness, happiness? Do we taste a delicious way of being, a filling of jammy joie de vivre? Do we give thanks for getting to share in all the present and preceding courses, all the next great feasts and most just desserts of ourselves still to come? And let's drink it all in, shall we, dear listeners? Imbibe and embody the joys of inhaling. Yes, on the airs of life itself. Sea-salted air, mountain-peaked air, the resinous morning air of an old-growth forest, spring-fed, autumn-leafed, deep-wintered air, the luscious air of the tropics, the bone-dry air of the desert, the ionized air before a storm, the fresh-washed air after rain, all the joys of inhaling, drinking from the well of nature's life-pouring, life-giving air. Joyce Sutphin, the second half. Everyone will go on celebrating the old birthday, counting the years as usual, but I will count myself new from this inception, this imprint of my own desire. The second half of my life will be wide-eyed, fingers shifting through fine sands, arms loose at my sides, wandering feet. There will be new dreams every night, and the drapes will never be closed. I will toss my string of keys into a deep well and old letters into the grate. The second half of my life will be ice breaking up on the river, rain soaking the fields, a hand held out, a fire and smoke going upward, always up. Thank you. Thank you for that. From In Praise of Mortality, Sonnets to Orpheus, Rilke. Want the change, be inspired by the flame where everything shines as it disappears. The artist, when sketching, loves nothing so much as the curve of the body as it turns away. What locks itself in sameness has congealed. Is it safer to be gray and numb? What turns hard becomes rigid and is easily shattered. Pour yourself out like a fountain. Flow into the knowledge that what you are seeking finishes often at the start and, with ending, begins. Every happiness is the child of a separation it did not think it could survive. And Daphne, becoming a laurel, dares you to become the wind. Thank you, Rilke, for that. Consult the almanac of yourself. It's full of forthcomings, what the weather of your world may be. Sometimes hot or cold, sometimes cloudy or clear. Dates for planting the fruits and flowers of your heart and mind. Tables of tides telling of ebbs and flows, highs and lows to be expected, but especially celestially, the times for your sun and moon, your faithful sun and graceful moon to rise, and all the stars of your heavenly spirit to shine. And last for now, the daily bread. Maybe the greatest gift you can give is the daily bread of your body, the daily fruit of your heart, the daily wine of your mind, the daily spice of your voice, the daily water of your ever-arising spirit. Thank you again for leaning in, listening and feeling in, tasting in, and for sharing these broadcasts with others and sending in comments. If you'd like to offer an idea, compliment, or question, send a note. My email is colin@thepoetorialist.com. To express thanks with a donation, thank you. You can contribute by Venmo to Fivefold, Fivefold, at pipeline.com, or by PayPal, or directly through my site, thepoetorialist.com, in the Donate tab, or simply by mail to me at P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island, 02891. Patrons can at times also host me as a working artist, a poet in residence on a given property for a given time, late this summer, autumn, or winter, to create a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to them. If that's you, email me to discuss the possibilities. I can also serve as a virtual poet in residence for an online community. Meanwhile, You can hear all the broadcasts online on YouTube on the Floating Poetry playlist. You can also subscribe if you want to be notified of next shows. I hope you lean in soon again. Until then, dear listeners, start with dessert first, and often. Take in the icing on life's cake. Serve daily and nightly and freely. Make a point of sweetening your days and ways of meeting the world. And watch what a world of difference it makes. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.